Syphilis can eat the nose right off your face, or leave scars that never heal. So you might think that in the pleasure quarters of Japan, it would have been the worst STD for a prostitute to get. And yet, women with the disease were not shunned or shamed for it. In fact, they might have even fetched a higher price. Today, we dive nose first into syphilis. Today, we dive noseless into syphilis, the plague of the pleasure quarters of Edo period Japan. How many prostitutes were infected, and how did people view the victims? Syphilis wasn't native to Japan. The Portuguese were to blame for spreading it to Japan from Europe because they were the first Europeans to visit the country in 1543. At least that's what people thought for a long time. Turns out the Portuguese deserve an apology because historians now believe that this bacteria came to Japan a whole 30 years earlier. In 1498, an explorer named Vasco da Gama arrived in India and had no idea what havoc he was about to cause. By that time, the disease had already done to Europeans what Brazil just did to Japan in the World Cup. With Vasco da Gama's expedition, syphilis found fresh, virgin territory in Asia. From India, it blasted through Southeast Asia and China. Then in the 1510s, it hopped through the Ryūkyūsō Islands, then to the big islands of Japan. So let's all apologize to the Portuguese. Syphilis actually made its way to Japan from this Vasco da Gama guy, who was The first Japanese description ever written about syphilis was in 1512 in a medical text. It described people with sores and lesions that looked like flower petals, something never seen before. What incarnation? People called it Tōsō, meaning Chinese sores or Chinese pox, or Ryūkyūsō, meaning Ryūkyū sores. They named it after where they thought the disease came from. It wasn't very nice to the Chinese or the Ryūkyūians, and was probably spoken with an ounce of xenophobia. It actually had a lot of names. Later, some places called it the Southern Barbarian Sores, after the Europeans who came from Southeast Asia, looking suspiciously itchy. I'd imagine people were not happy with foreigners bringing over a disease. They probably wrote essays, or maybe even haikus about it. Oh wait, I think I have one here. Barbarians came. They brought gifts from distant shores. We preferred the tea. The thing with syphilis is that when it arrives at a new place, it spreads as fast as legs. So usually very fast, especially in Japan. So let's look at how widespread syphilis was in Japan. And oh boy, you're not gonna believe it. The strongest evidence we have is from the Ugly Skulls study. It's a well-known fact that archaeologists love syphilis because the disease can really screw up your bones, especially the skull. Advanced syphilis treats the skull like students treat a wooden desk. This allows archaeologists to study those skulls. They examined 923 random Edo period adult skulls from burial sites around Edo, the capital, home of the most famous pleasure district, Yoshiwara. And what they found was terrifying. Now, for reference, just so you get the full scope, syphilis only causes bone lesions in really advanced cases, about 1 to 2% of people infected, according to a study of historical syphilis rates in Europe. So you would expect the number of ugly skulls in Edo to be around 1 to 2%. But wait, these syphilologists didn't just pick skulls of people with syphilis. These were random skulls from infected and non-infected people. Because you can't tell, right? A perfectly handsome skull might be from an infected person. It just didn't show up in the bones. So you would actually expect the number of ugly skulls to be way less than 1 to 2%. Well, the amount of skulls with syphilitic lesions they found was 5.4 to 9.6%. Just random people in the city with syphilis serious enough to show up in the skull. Okay, so this seems to imply that everyone had it, which is probably not true. It's just one study in one city, and there are some methodology differences between this one and the Europe study. The researchers of the Fucked Up Skull study themselves estimate that 40 to 70% of Edo adults had syphilis. But wait, there's more evidence. In 1810, a doctor wrote that of the 1,000 patients he saw each year, about 700 to 800 suffered from syphilis. An 1867 survey estimated that 80% of prostitutes had syphilis. Whatever the rate is, we can safely say that an overwhelming amount of people were infected, and among prostitutes, even more. If you went to a lady of pleasure back in those days, and she wasn't new to the profession, chances are she probably had it. Okay, now we know that syphilis was everywhere. So how did people treat the infected? The Portuguese missionary Luis Frois wrote that he was surprised how the Japanese reacted to syphilis. Europe had a huge stigma against those infected by it. Some scholars called it by a word I bet you've never heard before: syphilophobia. People shamed the victims and thought they were unclean. Their immoral lives of promiscuity caught up to them, people said. In Japan, though, Frois wrote that people wore the ulcers and lesions on their faces in plain sight. No one seemed that embarrassed by it. They saw it as just another infectious disease, like smallpox or measles. And it's not like the Japanese didn't know it spread through sex. They knew that visiting the pleasure district was like eating ramen while wearing a white top. You're probably not coming out of there clean. But they didn't think it was shameful or immoral to sleep around out of wedlock. And so syphilis wasn't a result of immorality. People even joked about it. One poem went, "Just when I thought I was cured, my nose fell off." You know? Pretty good. So people didn't shun syphilis victims. But how do they treat infected courtesans? Maybe pretty well. And it has to do with the syphilis life cycle. The disease has several stages. You might want to finish eating, or your stomach might go through some stages as well. The primary stage starts when you are infected. 2 to 6 weeks after infection, you get 1 or more skin sores where the infection happened. It's painless and not itchy, and it goes away after a few weeks. The secondary stage happens 4 to 10 weeks after infection, when the bacteria goes crazy and becomes super obvious. Usually, you get red rashes and nodules all over your body, and it lasts a few weeks. After this, though, the symptoms disappear. The disease enters the latent stage. You can't even tell you have it. This stage can last for years or decades, and it's because of this hidden stage that prostitutes who contracted syphilis might have been valued more than ones who didn't. You see, there was a belief that after the disease flared up in the first and second stages, the victim was cured. Somehow the misunderstanding spread that once the symptoms vanished, you couldn't get syphilis again. And so, a lady of the evening was not afraid of revealing she had syphilis in the past. Brothels were happy to let this belief linger, hoping it attracted more clients. Courtesans with the disease were even compared to birds. You see, one of the potential symptoms of early-stage syphilis is temporarily losing hair. A courtesan who lost hair was compared to a hawk shedding its feathers at the end of summer to grow new feathers ready for winter. According to a book in 1711, before the shedding stage, courtesans were paid lower wages, probably because they were new. After being in the scene for a while, a courtesan would likely catch the syph. It was a sign of an experienced, battle-tested courtesan. Her value grew, and she was given higher wages. Now, to be fair, this was a book of fiction, but historians agree that it reflected the sentiments of the time. Even if not completely accurate, it was a popular book that would not have included things that most people disagreed with. Unfortunately, after that hidden stage of syphilis, the disease sometimes enters the tertiary stage, and things can get serious. For those whose infections reach this advanced stage, their bodies fight the disease by forming these lesions called gumas, where little parts of your body, like your skin or bones or organs, decay away. This is when people can have serious complications, lose their noses, or at least have ugly permanent scars on their bodies. At this point, no one found it sexy, okay? I exaggerated a bit. Courtesans used their white makeup to cover the lesions to continue seeing clients. It was a terrible disease. Now, besides disease, there was one other side effect of the sex business that just wrecked a prostitute's body: pregnancy. Condoms were not popular, and so pregnancies were common. How did Japanese prostitutes deal with pregnancies? You might not like the answer. Click here to see what they did. We have some new members on Patreon and YouTube today. Atlas After what? CT8472, Kevin Hill, and Yes Ang. No Ang. Thank you so much, you guys. Alright, I love you, and spread the knowledge.